Lindsay Micklethwaite, Head of Product at Gladstone, discusses the challenges facing women in the IT industry, the benefits of workplace equality and diversity, and ways in which these can be promoted.
Okay, so first up, be good to understand if you have always wanted to work in the IT industry or if it's something you arrived at by way of, various other places. It'd be good to understand.
Yeah, so absolutely not. I think the teenage me would have been really shocked if she knew that this was where I was going to end up. If I'm properly honest, I think that IT was probably the one lesson at school that I absolutely hated. I just didn't see it as relevant. I didn't learn anything that I thought was useful. It was all like how to use clip art and how to format a letter. And it didn't really open my eyes to what a career in tech could be. But that said, I didn't really know what I did want to do, and my dad's advice was to be a plumber, and that wasn't really going to work for me. So I stayed in education, studied English lit at university, eventually thought, well, I like books. So I ended up with my very first job in publishing. So not a traditional tech route at all, but by hook or by crook, I ended up here. Publishing was changing, everything was changing at that time, and ebooks were becoming more mainstream. So I started working with higher education sector just as we were starting to change from buying bulk loads of actual textbooks to buying an ebook, and we found that we could create much richer content. We could add videos, we could put exam questions into that, and it was that my first kind of foray into a tech role, starting to work with that kind of traditional product as it was moving into a more software type product. And from there I moved from publishing into a more mainstream software sales route, selling into software that did sort of patient experience for the NHS. And that was kind of where I really had that light bulb moment. I realised that this software could do so much more than the traditional kind of paper-based systems that the NHS was still struggling with. And I just loved seeing how software could solve those problems. And the more I did of that, the more I loved it. And I started working then, moved from a more sales-facing role through to a more behind-the-scenes role, working with the R&D teams, taking on a bit more of a product role, a bit closer to the role I do today. But that was the reason why, really. It was seeing it in action, realising that software isn't about how to make computers work. It's about seeing a problem and making it a solution. And that's how I ended up in a product role, and that's what I do today. I've never kind of looked back from there.
Okay, so in terms of your actual role today at Gladstone, it'd be good just to understand what it is you do, if you can tell us that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm head of product here at Gladstone. We make software for leisure and gym industry. So we are creating solutions for people that want to go to the gym, and that's everything from booking your yoga class on your phone through to making the access control barriers open and close as you drive into the car park. So my role here is in kind of shaping the roadmap of the software that we deliver, and the team that I look after, the product team, are really integral in shaping kind of what features and functionality we want to develop for the future, talking with the customers, talking with end users, and designing software that will help us to achieve those goals.
Okay, fair enough. And in terms of what you've done in your career to date, in terms of the challenges you might have encountered, it'd be good to understand what they might have been, if there were any, but also, were you aware, and be interesting to compare and contrast, because you say you came, were in the publishing industry and then you've come into the IT industry. So it'd be good to understand what differences, if any, you found, particularly, we're talking part of the Women in IT series. So were there any sort of gender related issues, whether that might be in publishing or when you moved into the IT industry and perhaps you found suddenly there weren't as many women in the IT industry as perhaps you found in the publishing, and just your sort of characterization of what you found in your career, if you like.
Yeah, so I think in terms of that characterization, yes, definitely. If you look at the publishing industry, when I worked there, heavy bias towards women, actually. There's about 80% of the people I worked there were female, very few men. And then you look around my office here today, and it depends on which department you look at, but certainly if you look exclusively at the R&D department, far more weighted towards men than women. And it's something that I'm really conscious of. I am currently the only female within my product team, so all the people that report to me are male, and it's really unusual because product tends to be the one role within a traditional software R&D company where it is a bit more equal weighting girls and boys. So this is something that I'm keen to look at and to understand what's going on. We've been through a recruitment round recently, and we had one girl apply. We had like over 100 CVs, one female, and it was really quite telling to me that we hadn't got our recruitment strategy. I really challenged myself on, had we got our recruitment strategy right, or was there something more at play? But generally speaking, there's very much a heavier weighting of men in R&D, and I think a lot of that comes from that from frankly out-of-date stereotypes of what software engineering roles look like, people assuming that in order to succeed in this type of role, or you need to be really technical, or you need to love taking computers apart, put them back together, or you need to have spent your life working in the gaming world, which is also fairly male dominated, and it's just simply not true. Actually, what you need to have good problem solving skills, and some of the best problem solvers I know are women, and it's something that I'm kind of keen to champion, is that we do need to be more inclusive when we talk about these software roles, about what it is that you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis, and make sure that we are kind of trying to appeal to as many diverse people as possible.
And so in terms of the time you've been at your current company, Gladstone, have you noticed, or have you been instrumental in making some changes, or is it in the early days? And as you say, you were aware, for example, in that job application that 1 out of 100 was female, therefore you might need to do something different. Just characterize perhaps what you found when you started to where we are today, if there's been progress, and for starters, if that's all right.
Yeah, so in general, I think there's been huge progress. So if I was to talk about Gladstone and the culture that we had here when I first started, so I've been here about 8 years. The culture was very 9 to 5. Dress code was very formal. It is kind of fairly unrecognizable to the company that we are in today, and what we've seen is very slow and small changes have sort of snowballed. It started from kind of classic dress down Friday, and then the dress code was abolished, and then we moved into much more flexible working, and yes, probably COVID accelerated that a little bit, but we have now a setup which is very, very flexible. And I myself work a condensed week,
Yeah. So in terms of sort of future initiatives or other developments the company might be looking at, you mentioned the example earlier about the recruitment side. So is that an area where you'd look at how you can get a more balanced shortlist or whatever it is of male and females, or any other sort of projects that you're maybe under consideration by the company?
Yes, definitely. So we've in all of our kind of roles within R&D, we took a approach probably about 18 months ago to go back through all of the job specs and really strip them back to the bare bones of what it is that we needed from people. Did we need an education, a university degree? Probably not. What we needed were people that had the right mindset and that could really get into the kind of mind of the technology user and think pragmatically. So we really went back to basics with those job specs and tried very hard to make sure that what we were putting down on paper was really reflective of what the role was on a day-to-day basis. And it's something that we're continuing to do. I have had very different levels of success. So I was recruiting in the last month or so, and saw a very heavy amount of men apply. When I was recruiting this time last year, that wasn't the case. So some of it is to do with just market availability and some of the industry that we have here locally in terms of qualifications. We are seeing more men in these types of roles, but it is something that we're very keen to look at how we address that balance, and how we then also look at attracting talent that might not otherwise come back to the marketplace. So for me, one of the key defining reasons why I didn't apply for the job that I do right now at the first time that it came up was because I was pregnant, and I didn't think that I could do the job, and nobody told me I couldn't do the job. Nobody told me that I couldn't apply. But I kind of did that to myself. I took myself out of the running because I felt that I wouldn't be the best candidate because my mind was in two different places at that time. And I was actually just really fortunate that that role was then still available, or became available again when I was coming back from maternity leave. And my boss came round to my house and said, look, you've got to apply. And no, that's not a valid reason to not apply. And I think, what he did there is he kind of recognised the thing that I do to myself, and if I'm going to generalise, a lot of women do, that we tend to undervalue some of the skills that we've got. And he kind of has been a coach to me all the way through, and he came around and said, look, no, you've got to do this. You owe it to yourself to give it a go, because you've got the skills on paper, you know how to do this, but you kind of sold yourself short before you even tried. So that's something that we're looking at, is that whole group of women who are coming back, maybe from a career break, might be because of children, might be because of another reason, but making sure that we are trying to look wider than the traditional recruitment net, to look at those people that might not be applying otherwise. And I'm continuing to work with recruiters on other ways to reach candidates and to try to cast our net as wide as we can.
And in terms of what the industry maybe more generally can do, I mean, there seems to be a lot of focus on STEM subjects and the education system to try and even things up, shall we say. But do you think that's the most important thing, or as you perhaps alluded to there, it's equally important to be aware that once people are in the job market, they need to be encouraged to understand that, they potentially do have what it takes to join the IT industry or get promoted within that industry, as opposed to maybe think, I'm not suitable for this reason or that reason.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's both. So one of the things that really excites me with my small children, they're only just going to primary school, and they're already being encouraged to join like after school coding clubs and those sort of things. So they're starting to see that those careers could be there, but more importantly than that, they're seeing how exciting technology can be and the different uses of it. And I've seen some of the best software engineers I know go into school and actually show children practically what technology can do, and just trying to inspire that kind of creativity and that inspiration at a very early age, rather than taking the kind of traditional route with IT that perhaps I had in my schooling, where it's all very much about this is how you use a computer, this is how it's to kind of go a bit wider and try and inspire a bit of, you use technology every single day, these are all the cool things that it could do, this is what it could, and I think that will eventually pay off, but like you say, it's a kind of longer term strategy. But then, yes, I think that it's not just the technology industry. I think it's almost every industry. You have to accept that that people behave differently, and gender does play a factor in that. I'm not saying that imposter syndrome is solely the domain of women. It's not. I know plenty of men that have suffered with that. But there is a good amount of evidence out there that would suggest that men see a job advert and they're more likely to apply for it if they hit off over 60% of the criteria, whereas for women the threshold is much higher. And then again, that kind of falls down into, like you said, everyday sort of things, having to encourage people to go outside of their comfort zone. And often I've seen that once you can give somebody a little bit of encouragement, but there has to be a bit of an example with the people around you to look to, and I've found that here. We have a female CEO, we have lots of female leadership. There's definitely been a good strong culture of coaching and trying to encourage our internal talent to develop themselves and to see a career path here. It's something that I think we and almost every company could stand to do more of. But I do definitely think that of the kind of the men and the women that I've worked with on my team directly, everybody has something that they would like to do better at, and everybody has something that they're scared of doing. And for me, the best coaches I've had have been the ones that have worked with me to find those areas and pushed me a little bit further out of my comfort zone, a little bit further, until suddenly you look back and you realise that you've done more than you ever thought you could.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, and also with the job thing, and it sounds as if a lot of organisations just carry on doing what they've also done. I mean, I'm thinking of the job applications. I mean, I'm not in the market for a job, but I do occasionally see things on LinkedIn, and I look at it and I think, well, you know, the general description, of course, yeah, I can do that job. And then when you read the 20 things you're required, you suddenly think, well, I haven't got half of those, but you still think you can do the job. So maybe that side of things, people need to actually think how to write a job advertisement, you know, what actually matters and what doesn't, as one small thing, but also, as you say, to encourage people, you know, to go slightly out of their comfort zone. So it's just in general terms, just a better understanding of how to encourage people, whether it's to join the company or once they're in, to develop themselves and not worry about barriers, or at least make, you know, it obvious what might be a barrier and what's not really a barrier. It's just, you know, something that in your mind you might be thinking. Is that make some kind of sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that you know, we've seen it a lot with people that fear that they have to have a computer science background, or they have to really understand some sort of detailed level of SQL or depth sort of technology, and that's just not true. Like, the IT industry and the technology industry offers so much in terms of broad career paths. And you know, my job, the job that I do today, and several jobs that I've done in my history, I don't think I ever knew they were jobs. I didn't know that they existed as a teenager growing up. I didn't know that the scribbles that I could do on a piece of paper when I was thinking I could probably make this better would become something that I could work on and could build a career out of. And you don't have to understand how everything works at a very detailed level to have an idea of how to make something better. So I think within what we just said there, like if we're talking more generally about attracting more women into the technology industry, I think we could stand to do an awful lot more about encouraging, sort of advertising the work that we do, and showing people what career options there are. It isn't just your classic software developer. It isn't just somebody that is focused on networking or infrastructure. There are many more options and creative options as well. And I think that's something that we don't advertise, and people don't necessarily know unless they, like me, fall into it via a fairly roundabout route. And if I'm honest, I don't think there's anybody that does a product management job or a product ownership job that said when they were 6, that's what I want to do, because nobody knows what these jobs are or how they or what it means. So for me, that's kind of my dinner party thing, when people are like, so what is it that you do? And they hear the software and immediately switch off and think that I'm going to go into something very technical. But if I explain that, you know, I've spent my day talking with teams about the app that books their spin class and how we can make that better, then that's something that's really relatable. You know, we all use this technology every single day. I use setting a timer to tell my kids when they're done with brushing their teeth, or, you know, checking the traffic on the way to work, or booking my online shop or anything. It's so relatable. It's not this kind of Silicon Valley bros culture. It's something that is problem solving and solving problems that we all face in our everyday life. So that's something that I think we need to do more of. We need to talk more about, you know, what it is that we do and why we do it, and how, you know, there is a career path here for people that just have an inkling for they might like to make something a little bit better.
And in terms, maybe any advice you'd give to, whether it's you know, someone in the education system looking a career, or somebody who's already, you know, in the jobs market but looking for children, any thoughts or advice you'd give to women maybe looking at the IT industry? Any reservations, or would you unreservedly say it's a great space to work in and just, you know, go for it and see what happens?
I think I would say keep an open mind. I think I would say, you know, don't close doors for yourself. Go and have a look, see what you think. Talk to other women that work in the industry and try to understand, you know, what it is that they're actually doing. And kind of, you know, for somebody that is brand new to the industry and wants to find out about it, I think probably the biggest thing that we could do as an industry to make ourselves more accessible is to cut the jargon, to stop using so many acronyms, to stop you know, if we can talk about what we do in the way that you would explain it to somebody when you're having a cup of tea or meeting them for the first time in the pub, rather than assuming this level of knowledge, this level of technical detail that seems to be the first thing people want to put down on paper when they describe a tech job. I think that that's something that we could really do to help ourselves, just to be that bit more accessible. And talking to people that are thinking about it as a career, I would get them to think about what technology they use. Just over the course of a week, think about all the times that they interface with a mobile app, with some form of technology, and what that is doing, why they do it, like what they like about it, what they don't like about it, what is it that they're getting from it, is it making their lives easier, is it frustrating them in some way, shape or form. And I think that once you start talking to people in those terms, they start to think, well, actually, okay, I can see that what this industry is about. I can see why we're doing these things, and I can see that there could be something that I could contribute there.
Okay, and finally, I was going to ask, I mean, it may be you mentioned the jargon thing, but I was going to ask as a sort of final, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing in the IT industry, what would it be? The jargon thing, or would it be something else?
So yeah, we need to cut the jargon, and we also just need to get rid of the misconceptions that surround our industry. It's not all Silicon Valley. It's not all your typical white male in their hoodies, or the coder that's started life in their mum's bedroom. It's a hugely broad industry with a really diverse range of career options, and it's getting broader every day. Traditional mainstream industry, it's all moving towards technology, and with that in mind, I think we have to embrace it more, and we ultimately just need more girls to apply for the jobs as well.
Okay, it's been lovely to chat to you, and thanks for sharing lots of insights about what's going on, both within your company and the wider industry. So, Lindsay, thanks very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.